So, as far as I know, we're live. We'll give a second for people to get on here. While people do, um, again, this is going to be a very spoilery episode. Feel free to talk about whatever whatever you want from whatever episode. I think, in fact, episode 5, special episode, I think it was called, a very special
Yeah.
episode.
Mhm.
I imagine that'll be talked about a lot. Some things I know I would love to chat about, but maybe there's some things I haven't thought of. You both are obviously clinicians, psychologists. I am going to want to talk. I believe that I was a big Marvel comic reader.
Mhm.
That's basically
as was I.
perfect. That is how I learned how to read. Was comic books, so that's what got me into it. X-Men was my primary. I, of course, love when MCU does its own thing, and I, of course, love when they draw in, hey, Wanda. I, of course, love when they draw in comic canon, right?
So meaning we have to talk about House of M.
Correct.
we have to touch on House of M.
We have to touch on House of M. But a few things that I know I've talked a lot about, and I would want to talk more about, is that we'll get into, especially as people kind of stroll in. And this is last minute advertising for this, but we should have a good amount. If I were to guess, I know we've had a lot of people on our Discord who've talked about it. But I know I would love, as far as clinically, to talk about dissociative fugue.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to talk about the idea of how in God's name do you diagnose someone with dissociative fugue when they're literally able to distort reality. So if they have a cognitive distortion, but then can take reality and distort it to match their cognitive distortion, how the hell do you diagnose that? Because then you're looking like the jerk who's like, well, I guess I'm wrong now. I'm subscribing to the cognitive distortion that you can't distort time and space and reality.
Well, in the context of the DSM, you can't really distort reality unless it's your own.
Well, that's right. So
Right.
it's a massive loophole in both the ICD and DSM. So it's like she is untouchable as far as diagnostically, as far as an F code or the DSM-5. But of course, I would love to talk about dissociative fugue. As well as PTSD and complicated PTSD as it exists for her, and I'll leave room to kind of to hear your thoughts on that. Looks like we got 5 people here, but I would like to leave room to hear your thoughts on that. But anything, and then of course any comic lore, Mephisto, the further MCU stuff like the Eternals, Deadpool 3. The idea that they might be trying to merge Fox with kind of a Deadpool-esque fourth wall break, to truly suggest that the Fox universe, the Marvel universe of comics, and the MC universe are all actual universes, and now we're bringing it. The idea that in the comics, through a hex, she is able to say, no more mutants. Mutants cease to exist. And the moment she said, I don't even know how all this started, the beginning of her most extreme trauma of the death of her brother shows up at the door. And that instead of no more mutants, she might as well have just said more mutants. And now we have a reverse hex in this new world. But I know those are things I would love to touch on. And then, whatever else that I have not thought of that you perhaps have, which is why you're here, to share their opinions. I could sit in mine all day long, but I'm only one person. So that would be a very boring stream. So we'll get another minute, but I guess what we can do now is, if I don't know, wondering if you could make, I haven't been checking my social media, but if you would be okay to make a Discord announcement, maybe even with a few relevant tags. I know Outrider has had a lot of very good theories on this. A few people have made some pretty good ones. I know you're working too, but if you guys, for now, if you could introduce yourself a bit, and Nikki, if we could start with you.
Hi, I'm Nikki, or Therapist Nikki. I work out of Tampa, Florida. and I'm a private practice clinician. I work a lot with trauma as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And you are, I believe, a geek therapist now.
Almost.
Okay. a very soon to be certified geek therapist. Absolutely. Perfect. All right, Dr. Goku, which I have a tough time calling you anything but that because I love it so much.
Hey, that's what everyone knows me at. So my real name is Dr. Jean-Luc Williams. I'm a resident in psychology. Eventually, when I can finish my HLP, I'll be licensed. Life happens. I'm also the vice president and clinical director for Guardians MH. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, melding in video games and mental health. Perfect. And eventually get my geek therapist moniker as well. Too many things to do. There are not enough hours in the day.
Right, totally.
No, if only we were Scarlet Witch. Minus the awful trauma, perhaps.
Right.
Oh, so much trauma.
So much trauma. I had a client today where we didn't get into an argument, but we got into a hearty debate of what stone was in Loki's scepter. Do you guys remember? It was retconned. So if you're just going off Avengers, the answer is different. But it was retconned in Age of Ultron. Do you remember what stone they plucked out of Loki's scepter?
I don't remember.
This is the least
I think it was the reality.
Avengers.
Was it the reality stone? No.
So in Avengers, it was the Space Stone from the Tesseract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that.
It was retconned in Age of Ultron to be the Mind Stone, which was pulled from the scepter to make Vision.
Okay.
So it's very confusing. If someone says it's the Space Stone, they're not wrong, per se. Oh my gosh.
They're both right.
They're both pretty much right. Yeah, per se, actually, oh, you didn't know that. 3 of the most douchey things, if I ever hear it come out of my mouth, I'm like, nope. Reverse time. But it is, in fact, the Mind Stone. Loki did, in fact, come from the stone that was in the scepter. As to why Thanos gave Loki the Mind Stone, I don't know. Maybe that's when we just leave.
Oh, it was because he was controlling people with it.
Well, yes, it's just sort of like, man, that seemed like a risky move to give
to give it to Loki.
To give it to Loki, people. Right? Maybe the Space Stone, okay, maybe, but the Mind Stone, and he could control Thanos. Big debate there, if that makes much sense. But so we've got for just a bit of background, we have Vision, who has the Mind Stone, which came from Loki's scepter. He was killed in Infinity War. That was incredibly traumatic to Wanda, who has not, I don't think, been called Scarlet Witch yet, but we know as Scarlet Witch, of course.
Yeah, so they haven't really named her Scarlet Witch in the MCU, because I think they're wanting to differentiate Wanda versus the actual Scarlet Witch. And I think she's becoming Scarlet Witch with everything going on.
I agree. I think we're seeing a merger of Marvel Comics, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Fox Marvel Universe. And I think you're right. I think it'll be roundly needed at the end of WandaVision of Scarlet Witch. That I think is a solid guess. But
she has the costume in the trailers.
Right.
She indeed does, and I'm excited about it. So, of course, does anybody want to give... Well, why don't we do this? Does anybody want to give kind of a brief summary of who Scarlet Witch is in the comics?
That's all you, Dr. Goku.
So, Wanda Maximoff in the comics is very different than we can see her in the MCU. So in the MCU, they're kind of trying to retcon it a little bit, but in the comics, she is Magneto's daughter.
Yes.
So her and Pietro are the twins for Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
So she is a mutant, and she is a level 5 Omega mutant, which is the top of the scale.
She is arguably the most powerful mutant in all of X-Men, even compared to Apocalypse or
compared to Xavier, compared to Jean Grey.
Oh yeah, any of them. And there is a point that we might come back to, that at one point she literally, and her power is of hex. When she's younger, she's like a kid with a fire hose. She doesn't know what she's doing. She causes a lot of chaos. By the end, when she controls it, literally whatever her wish is, whatever she says, a vocal hex, a cognitive hex, becomes reality. There is literally a point where she says, simply with one tear, no more mutants. And mutants cease to be. She is remarkably powerful. And like Dr. Goku said, in MCU, she is not technically a mutant. As it has been...
Because I think they're retconning mutants in.
Well, right. It'd be interesting of what they're going to do. Now, so for those who don't know, there was a big copyright issue between Fox Marvel and Marvel Cinematic. We have seen Wanda and Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men series. We saw Quicksilver, who is played by Peter Evans, as a playable character. We saw Scarlet Witch, or Wanda, as a post-credit scene in some institution or something like that at the end of one of the movies that I can't recall. And they were mutants in there. Of course, we have different actors in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they have a different origin story. Interesting enough, Wanda and Pietro's origin story, they are the result of an experiment that came from the Mind Stone, which of course we know Wanda fell in love with the Mind Stone incarnate. So the thing that made her Scarlet Witch, she is literally in love with, in some forms, her creator, who was Vision, okay? Who came from the Mind Stone, which came from Loki's scepter. A lot of really deep, I think, connections there that you could play with all day long, right? I think you could.
Because I think what I remember is the Mind Stone was unlocking some latent abilities that were there.
Possibly.
So I think that's how they're going to retcon like the X gene somehow.
It's a good theory. So for those who don't, this is a spoiler-filled panel, by the way. And to get what Dr. Goku is talking about, in the end of the last episode, Peter Evans, who plays Pietro in the Fox universe, came to the door as her, "You're not going to give your big brother a hug? Do I got to kill you for a hug?" And this is the first time we've seen a potential merger of universes. And where in the comics, she says no more mutants and they cease to exist. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, very possible that she said, I don't even know how this all started. And the origin of her most serious trauma, the death of her brother, shows up at the doorbell on her door from the Fox universe. So a lot to unravel in this whole thing here. So I think we've got enough to get started. Okay. Let me ask a very vague question that's not fair to ask. You can answer it in any order. If there's a long gap, I'll pick one of you. As therapists, as psychologically minded professionals, what has WandaVision invoked in you? What kind of thought has it provoked in you as mental health professionals?
So for me, it's bereavement and grief.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
We can see her and losing vision in the way, and I'm going to kind of nerd out on it a little bit. She lost vision through Thanos as Thanos killed Vision, and then she herself died through the snap, or the blip as it's now called. I still prefer snap. She came back, but because Vision did not die through the blip, Vision is dead. So she has kind of that survivor's guilt, but losing a partner, because they had built I think it was like a 2-year relationship.
Yeah.
In between kind of the movies. Losing a partner, a spouse, is one of the biggest traumas or griefs people will ever go through.
Yeah.
And certainly this is cumulative to her losing Pietro and then her losing her parents.
Right.
So her life is riddled with loss.
And to give a timeline for people, roughly, she already has a traumatized childhood. She already does, being experimented on, being raised in.
Because her parents were killed by an explosion from a Stark bomb.
Right.
Yes. She was raised as a lab rat. She grew up in very serious poverty. It was basically just her and her brother, and she could trust nobody. Not to mention the trauma that comes with having the power she has. Then, in the Age of Ultron, she loses her brother very traumatically. They had a spiritual bond, a neural bond that we know, because without even seeing his death, she knew it happened, and had the first explosion of a more comic Scarlet Witch-like power, where she's sort of moving people around, and then he dies, and she cries, falls to her knees, explodes, and literally evaporates these people that she was just sort of holding off previously, and they just cease to exist. It was the first sort of like, damn, that was more like a hex than that was telekinesis, right? And she had telepathy. 2 years, then Vision, of course, comes about. 2 years kind of go by, and then there's the snap. From the Infinity Gauntlet, she disappears. 5 years later, they come back. And WandaVision takes place, if I understand it correctly, about 2 weeks. Only about
9 days.
Yeah, 9 days. Okay, 9 days.
9 days.
After she comes back. So as much as it's been 5 years and 9 days, Wanda,
For her, it's 9 days.
Right.
It's 9 days. So as Dr. Cookie said, her husband just died in a very traumatic way. And
she learns that Vision was being experimented on by Sword. It's going against Vision's wishes. So that, again, set her off in a rage.
Yes. Thank you for the host, N8 Foo. Yes. So it sent her into a rage, and also keep in mind, we're sort of Hey, Megan Seide, we're sort of desensitized to the idea of seeing Vision in pieces. Seeing Vision in pieces, as much as he is a robot, would be horribly traumatizing on his own, as she did. He was torn up. They were obviously trying to find a way to use him as a weapon. And, thank you, Megan. So it's 3 weeks from when she came back from the recent episode, 9 days from when she stole the body. Thank you for that clarification. Guys, please, there is no such thing as nerd sniping here. If we get something wrong, tell us. Clarify, we are working on a mutual truth here. This is not a competitive... the
MCU is very convoluted with timelines.
Right. We are not going to take offense to corrections. So, not to mention, it's arguable that they were also probably experimenting on Pietro's body at one point, and she might have figured that out too. So yes, very, very good. So bereavement and trauma. What about you, Nikki? To reiterate the question again, for people who may not have heard, you watching WandaVision, you're a psychological-minded individual. You are a therapist. You work with trauma. What thoughts has WandaVision provoked for you as a professional?
For me, it's a lot of complex trauma. I mean, also, grief and bereavement as well. But it's almost like the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Like she comes back. He's not there, or he's dead. On top of the stuff that she went through childhood, as you pointed out, and having to go through her whole life with this. And then it's like, oh my goodness. This is it. I can't take any more.
The Jade Necro. I can't decide if I actually want to watch it. I don't know if we need a serious trigger warning on this. I mean, we are going to be talking about PTSD, and it absolutely will be spoiler filled. So if you don't want a spoiler, maybe don't watch it. Yes. As far as sensitive stuff, maybe. But it will absolutely be spoilery. Thank you, Wandering. Now, for our viewers, could you maybe explain a bit about the difference between PTSD and capital C PTSD?
So, post-traumatic stress disorder is usually from one event. You can't cope with it at the time. So, and it lasts, like the effects will go on lasting afterwards, because you weren't able to handle it at that time. Big C, complex PTSD, is when you have a traumatic event and then other events get piled on top of it. that you haven't been able to reconcile.
Exactly
So-
right.
So multiple traumas
Right.
that have happened throughout
Yep.
your life. Unfortunately, in North America, we still need to classify it under PTSD through DSM.
Correct.
Right.
Even though we
Um,
know it's complex post-traumatic stress, DSM
Mhm.
tends to lack behind the ICD.
Right.
Right. Now, for those who don't know, in the U.S., we still are able to use ICD codes. So we still can give codes for CPTSD. But the main thing, to Dr. Goku and Nikki's point, Nikki, are you a doctor?
No.
Okay,
no,
I'm making
no.
sure I'm not. Okay, now Nikki is a fantastic therapist, incredibly informed, and an amazing geek, which is why she's here. Really value her opinion very much. With ICD, for those who don't know, we do use those F codes, so we can diagnose CPTSD in the States. And there is an important distinction because we know the research behind both symptomology and treatment for CPTSD versus PTSD. Oh, anxiety, thank you so much for the raid. Hello, everyone.
Hey.
We know that the research is there is a very big difference between PTSD and CPTSD, especially as it relates to intervention. So thank you both for pointing that out to us. I'm with you both. I think of, hey, I hate you in dinosaurs. I love that name. Oh my God. I wanted to be a dinosaur until I was 5, until I ate a prickly leaf because I thought I was a brontosaur and it got stuck in my throat and I had to go to the hospital. And then I was like, I don't want to be a dinosaur anymore. Stride Cypher, what's up? What's up, everybody? Hey, so good to see you. Bear over there gaming. Good. Welcome, everybody. Great, sir. You sound like my niece. Cool story, Uncle Ryan. All right. So for me, yes, both of those, as well as trauma-induced dissociative fugue. I know you, of course, know what a dissociative fugue is. For those who might not know, for people who go through very significant trauma, some go through amnesia, dissociative amnesia, where they forget everything. Others go through something very peculiar called dissociative fugue. It's sometimes referred to as the wandering of the mind, where they create a new world. They'll live in a different town. They'll believe they're a different person. They'll form a different job. Usually it's for only a few weeks. Some people have dissociative fugue for years. And then they realize, oh my gosh, I'm this guy who lived in this other town and I've got a wife. And it's like, oh my gosh. My theory, and I would love to hear y'all's take, okay? And just in general, the theory of WandaVision. Yeah, so the takeaway is if Ryan had not eaten a leaf, he would still want to be a dinosaur 1,000%. That is correct. That is, yep. Thank you. Classic dinosaur move. Thank you. But my theory is they are merging a comic version of Wanda as Scarlet Witch. They are merging the Fox universe, and what we are in, WandaVision, does represent a dissociative fugue-induced hex. I believe it is her power causing it. I believe it was originally trauma induced. Now she doesn't really know who she is. It started off that way. But now she's kind of realizing that she's kind of getting it. But here's the deal. In the real world, if you have dissociative fugue and you start to realize it, you recognize my reality is distorted. But what happens when you can distort reality and you say, I'm starting to realize it, so now I'm just going to willfully distort reality? Mm-hmm. Can you even diagnose that? What do you guys think?
That was my point as well, is it could have started off as a dissociative fugue.
I think it did.
From that grief and trauma. But nearing the end, so episode 3, 4, more 5,
mm-hmm.
4 and 5.
4 was the first time where we really saw that kind of like, she knows.
She is in control. And certainly in 5 this is her reality now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
she's saying, stay out of my home.
Yes. Thank you for the follow, guys. Yes, thank you, Dr. Goku. So Bear over their gaming says, is such trauma caused by or can be a result of the death of a loved one? And just to remind people of Wanda's, and then I want to go to you guys. Raised in poverty, treated like a lab rat, lost her brother, which was incredibly traumatic, lost her husband, and as not to mention all the times where she has been almost died, these little things we take for granted because we're not necessarily superheroes. Almost
Mhm.
died, almost watched people she loved died. And again, almost killed this big thing and all these awful things. Guys, can such a thing come from the death of a loved one?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like I mentioned earlier, the death of a spouse. So she had the death of her parents, then she had the death of Pietro, which were her entire world, and then she linked it to Vision. So this kind of special bond that they had together. Losing Vision shattered her world. So she had 3 of these types of grief, and on top of everything else. But this type of grief, even on a non-superhuman person,
Mm-hmm.
can make it though as people feel like they have lost their minds, that reality has shifted because you have these 2 separate things. So you have this partner that generally is your life, your anchor point, and then you have these secondary losses. So you have the loss of the partner, and then you then have a loss of either the future, economic stability, or marriage, kids, whatever. Everything that was going to be is now a loss.
Now,
So people,
go ahead, keep going.
and people want to regain that control.
Mm-hmm.
And with someone that can bend reality at their will, they create their own reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she's actually controlling people in her reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, her reality was distorted through trauma, and then she can then distort reality actually to match her own. For those, I know what's going to happen here is there are going to be some people in chat who have experienced their own trauma. I can see by some of the comments that people are either very educated about it. Zuki TV, I could see that you're very aware of what's going on, or maybe even have an even personal experience with it. This won't be super sensitive of a topic, but we are going to be talking PTSD. If things get tough, we do have a mod that you can reach out to, as well as I posted here our Discord channel. And within Discord channel, Dr. Goku, actually, we use a bot that he and Guardians of Mental Health created that
You
provides.
can actually have it on Twitch as well.
Oh, I should do that. That provides great resources, and I believe if they do exclamation point PTSD.
Yep.
If you do if you join our Discord and on any of the channels type exclamation point PTSD, it will show you an explanation of what that is and give you a great deal of resources. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure that we're very sensitive. If anything goes wrong, we will have a moderator. Thank you so much, Wandering. Wandering Shrink is our amazing moderator, and we'll help you out. And again, thank you for joining us. Yes, so I think general consensus, all of us, absolutely. Bear Over There Gaming, for sure it can be the death of a loved one. Now, as a little note, things can be traumatic, but not necessarily traumatizing. You can have
so
people...
capital T, lowercase t.
Yeah.
Right. You can have, kids who have had a parent die of AIDS, they're alone and they're starving all the time, and they've seen a murder, and they don't have PTSD. Relative to their life, it's not necessarily traumatizing, but it's still absolutely traumatic. For other people, you can have things that are not quite as objectively intense, and it can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. We do know in the research, thank you for the input, Bear Over There Gaming. We do know in the research that some things in our Western industrialized culture are more traumatizing in general. Doesn't mean that your trauma is any less meaningful, but that in general, when we look at a lot of people, some things are more traumatizing, and seeing a traumatic death of a physically traumatic death of her brother, a physically traumatic death of her husband, these, as Dr. Goku said, they go right on up there. They are really rough. So, guys, do we think, I've expressed my opinion, do you guys think that WandaVision, what they're watching in the show, is a manifestation, a hex, of Wanda's bereavement and trauma, or do you think it's something else, like maybe Mephisto controlling Wanda and they're preparing for Spider-Man 3, or something? What do you guys think WandaVision is? And of course, people in chat, please share your opinion. We want to hear your thoughts. We might be therapists, but that does not mean we know everything, and you guys have such great ideas, so we want to hear it. What do you guys think it is?
I
My
think
opinion, it's both.
You think it's both
That
Hex and Mephisto?
Yeah, so I think it started out as Wanda starting out at that dissociative feud, creating her own reality, and Mephisto kind of latching onto it, doing essentially Wanda's moment of weakness.
You think he's
Because
kind of capitalizing on her?
It should take an enormous amount of cognitive effort to keep all of this going. So controlling everyone in the town, changing things as we go, and then broadcasting it to the outside. Because everything that's going on there is Wanda. So I'm hearing Mephisto's kind of capitalizing on that with I'm still having my thoughts on Agnes, on where she fits and who she is. I've heard some theories.
For those who don't know, Agnes is her quirky neighbor who is one of the few who has broken script a few times of like, should I take it again? And like, what? You know, kind of thing. And there's a lot of implications from the comics about Agnes. There's a lot of, we won't go into it so much. You can check out a lot of cool videos about Easter eggs from WandaVision that'll really elaborate on that. But she might play a pivotal role here. But yeah, thank you for that. What about you, Nikki?
I was thinking about Mephisto. It sounds like he could be piggybacking off of kind of Silent Traveler in there. I really think it's her own Hex creating this, because it's really huge for it to be another character as well.
I'm inclined to agree. I can definitely see them setting up, kind of teeing up Mephisto. I also think,
because we saw his helmet.
We did. I'm inclined to. Let's see. We actually got. Zuka says exactly. Mephisto doesn't have to work that hard. He's got a lot to work with when it comes to her mental health. Very good point, Zuki. A lot of people agree that it's a combination of both. I'm inclined to think it's more Hex, in the very least. I think MCU has done a great job with. I mean, you know, you can always do better, but I think they've done a great job empowering women, empowering female characters. That scene at the end of Infinity War with all the female heroines together. And then, of course, what has now been said by the director as the most powerful person in the MCU right now is Wanda. She could have taken down Thanos if it wasn't for that last-minute blitz. I love how powerful she has become, rightfully so. I would be a little frustrated, I think, if she was under the control of Mephisto, to be honest. I would be a little frustrated. I would trust whatever they do organically, but I kind of hope they don't. Now, here's the deal. Some people believe that Mephisto has been introduced in the form of Pietro. For those who don't know, this is the first possible merger of MCU, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the Fox Marvel Universe. For those who don't know, but we probably all do, Fox had rights to Marvel, so they made all the X-Men movies, including Days of Future Past and X-Men First Class. Disney, of course, had Marvel. And there was a big split between existing X-Men characters. So we won't go super into it, but there was actually a Peter Evans version of Quicksilver from the Fox Marvel Universe. And there was I forget the actor's name, but another, if anybody wants to write that, I'll be so grateful. There was another Quicksilver version who was more of a product of experimentation from the minds. I think it is Aaron Stewart. Fantastic, Mr. Hop. Thank you. Thank you. That sounds really right. And Lord, is that man handsome. What?
An extra thing that they did is the last episode was based in the 80s.
Yes.
So 80s, 90s. The Quicksilver we got back in the Fox universe was during the 80s. So he fits that transition of time period.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even put that together. That's awesome.
Remind me, in Days of Future Past,
during the 80s.
Who was the president at the time?
I think it was Reagan.
In the 80s, it's Reagan or Bush.
In Days of Future Past, it was Reagan?
If I remember correctly, I might be mistaken.
Because I thought it was the 60s where where Xavier was tripping on drugs. There was sort of the hippie stuff. It was, I want to say, now, wow, it's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, because he had the Walkman.
He did have a Walkman, didn't he?
And that was in the 80s.
He did have a Walkman. It must have been. But God, Xavier would have been Xavier and Magneto. Why am I blanking on his name? What's Magneto's name? Why are we all blanking on this? Oh, Eric. They were so young still. It had to have been the 60s, right? But then again, I do remember him putting... Well, we won't get stuck on it, but we'll figure that point. If anybody wants to research that for that'd be amazing. What year did that take place in, that movie? Yeah, so we have Peter Evans. Now, here's why I think it might be a hex. For those who don't know, her ability in the comics, basically whatever she says happens. In the comics, she's the most powerful mutant. In MCU, she's the most powerful Nixon. Okay, thank you, Cram. Okay, thank you. But you got me thinking now, because I do feel like I remember the Walkman, right? But
yeah,
I remember what was that? So, thank you, Cram. Appreciate it. Eric, yeah, I don't remember his last name. That's all right. So a hex in the comics, at one point she says, "No more mutants." And mutants cease to exist. In the show, she says, she pauses, very notably so, when talking with Vision at the end of the last episode, and says, "I don't even know how all of this started." And then, ding dong, and the person who comes to the door is Fox Marvel Universe version of her brother Quicksilver, people we know that she cannot bring back to life. And that arguably is where her complex trauma started, is the death of her brother. It was the first time we saw Hex-like abilities. She had
mentioned Pietro the episode prior.
She did. Someone once said, "Your brother Pietro," and she gets a tear. That was probably the first time she started to leave her dissociative view. Thank you, 1973. Thank you, Megan Seide. What's up?
Because you notice a shift in her dialect, in her accent.
Yes, you did.
So she was talking very American, and then you heard that Sokovian shift, and then back.
Which is a good point. People with dissociative fugue, their accents will change, their country of origin. Why we think it's a willful dissociative fugue, which would be the first case ever, because she can literally distort reality, is, thank you for the follow, Zuki, is because once she gets out of the WandaVision to talk to everyone, back to the Sokovian accent, pops back in, American, WandaVision, right? Full House / Different Strokes / whatever else. So, all right, so we're kind of, so I think some people think Mephisto is going to be Peter Evans' version of Quicksilver, aka Pietro, aka her brother. I just think the timing is too perfect. And I believe Pietro was a manifestation of another hex of hers. I don't even know how this started. And her subconscious brought mutants into our current universe. And I believe that the introduction of mutants into the MCU was done by a woman, powerful woman, who is trying to figure out and process her trauma. And this is the first step in processing her trauma, is manifesting a tangible version of the source of her most traumatic episode that is a variant of her brother. That's my theory. I think it would be cool if they followed it. What do you guys think?
Because in House of M, which is really seems what it's based on.
Can you tell us a bit about House of M?
So House of M is Wanda just flipping mutants and humans on one another, where she was in this, I don't remember exactly what it was, in this sort of coma, and Xavier and a couple other people were discussing if they should kill Wanda because she had become so powerful. Quicksilver was objecting to it, and she uttered the words, I don't remember exactly what they were, and then the mutants became the dominant species. And the humans were ostracized, where essentially Magneto was king.
Mm-hmm.
And through everything that happened and how she didn't like how things were going, she then uttered the word "no more mutants" and wiped out like 90% of mutants in existence.
Yep, for sure.
Right. I'm thinking that a lot of these characters, like Pietro coming back and even Agnes, they're all part of like internal family systems. They're parts of her that are
I like
trying to
that.
process, like the projectors, the managers, the firefighters, the exiles, which she literally exiles Captain Rambo.
She does,
Mhm.
literally, which may have given her those proton abilities. Maybe there's a
Yeah.
little Easter egg when they do a. I mean, this could have happened earlier.
Was doing an X-ray and you couldn't see through the X-ray.
Yep, it was just energy. So I wonder if that happened. A lot of people are wondering. But yes, well, so if I can ask this, and please, for anybody who's watched, we've got some great viewers here. We love the interaction. We want your opinions. Do not hesitate. Just because we're talking psychology doesn't mean you can't either. I'm sure there's a lot you've studied. I know Anxiety's crowd has been very educated. And I have a feeling geeks in general love psychology, I've just noticed. So it's you could totally have a psychological or geek opinion that trumps ours. So we would love to hear it. Wanda has become a warlock patron. There you go. But if I can ask this, if this is a hex manifestation of her complex trauma, how is she going to process through this in a way that we would, of course, do with her to in a healthy way, process through her trauma? And how might that be already being manifested through the timeline of 60s, 70s, 80s, through anything else? What are your thoughts?
I think like the shows, because even now, like in the pandemic, there's a lot of people watching sitcoms and things, especially through the 90s, that were comforting.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have to imagine that Wanda growing up, she probably watched television in some way, shape, or form, and were watching these sitcoms. And you know what happens usually in like a 90s or 60s or 70s sitcom. They usually resolve and they don't last, like the problems. So she's working through these comforting, nostalgic shows.
Yeah.
She's also creating what she never had.
Mm-hmm.
So she's creating a family, a relationship, a normal life, in a time where things were less complicated. So in a way, it's almost, to me, it's like she's prolonging her grief because she's not wanting to face it.
Well, I think you both bring up very good points. There's great things about TV, movies, video games, amazing things. But both a good and bad thing about it is escapism. And I think it is a part of our culture at times through old sitcoms or current Netflix binging to escape tough parts of life on a small scale. In fact, even in Japan, there is the longest running cartoon called Sazai-san, and it has its own syndrome, Sazai-san syndrome. It is an anime that plays every Sunday based upon manga that shows traditional Japanese life that comforts people from their own. And when the credits roll, people experience legitimate depression because they've lost the escapism of, I was just in this wonderful family of just traditional life, and now I got to go back to my Monday job and the tough parts of life. We got some opinions I want to bring up here. Megan Seti says, I wonder if her sons will be the ones to help her and rescue her. That's something to chat about later. Mm-hmm. Fantastic Mr. Hops says, within the confines of this fantastic universe, is this fascinating to turn this into a case vignette of sorts as how current trauma-informed approaches would apply to Wanda. Honestly, I always wonder what would therapy look like within the Marvel Universe, and we have seen glimpses of that, even with the group therapy in Endgame. Very good point, fantastic Mr. Hops. And over at Geek Therapeutics, we've done a lot of continuing educations and panels on how this would look in comic universes. We presented a lot of gaming and comic conventions, and in fact, there's someone named Janina Scarlett on Twitter who has an amazing YouTube video where she literally, as a therapist, has therapy sessions with Spider-Man or whatever it is, and it's kind of cool. And we can provide that
a good
link.
plug for some of my friends at Capes on the Couch. So they have a really good podcast where they bring comic book characters onto an actual psychiatrist's couch to talk about what's going on.
That's so cool. No, fantastic, Mr. Hops. I think we understood you very well. Thank you for that point. Yes, like EMDR, which is a form of therapy for trauma, as we all know, to make her relive the trauma, but in a safe environment. Now, let's talk about that for a second. So I see a lot of trauma as well. And my favorite approach to trauma is what's called TFCBT, trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. Usually about 12 sessions. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. It was developed at MUSC. That's where I had worked, and so I got very into the research there. And it's basically 12 sessions that do, as Zuki had talked about, the only way to get past trauma is to face it. Can't escape it, but you want to face it in a systematic way that makes it manageable to where you can talk about the trauma without experiencing it again, without reliving it. I don't know if she's already doing this with the 60s, 70s, 80s. I don't know if it could be argued that. If I can quickly ask you guys this, what is your, so Dr. Goku, you said TFCBT is yours as well?
Yep.
Nikki, what is your favorite approach to trauma, to dealing with PTSD?
Well, I do like a whole synergistic.
You do modulistic. View. You do a bunch.
Yeah, it's a whole bunch. It depends on what the client needs.
Got it.
And I'm also a relationship therapist, so working with the systems as well and talking about trauma. First thing is emotional regulation. That's the big thing.
Sure.
Before we can even start working on the others. And then the only way out is through, as you were saying. Like, you have to face it. You have to talk about it.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this question, if I could. And again, anybody who wants to comment would love to hear it. Has Wanda already experienced what may have been cathartic or therapeutic exposure to her trauma in WandaVision? Question 1. Question 2, moving from here on out, what would she need in this fantastical world, as fantastic Mr. Hops put it, to be able to appropriately process her trauma? So start with number 1. Have we seen her go through some narrative therapy, some trauma therapy already?
In a sense, I can see her blocking a lot of the trauma.
Yeah.
So there was an episode, I think it was episode 3 or 4, where we saw it was where we saw the corpse of Vision.
Yeah. Oof, that was a tough
And
one.
So she just saw that and like, nope, and wished it away.
Too much, too fast.
Mm-hmm. And all the time you see something happens and she just goes, nope, and kind of rewinds and does it over again. Almost like she is blocking the trauma work. She's not wanting to expose herself to the reality.
Yep. No, that's a good point. She is engaging in escapism with WandaVision in general. We're having these little moments where she has exposure. To Dr. Goku's point, when we do have exposure to trauma, and I'm going to use a trigger word here, the R word here. I worked for children at a children's trauma center with a lot of sexual abuse and to some extent penetrative rape. Obviously, on session 1, you're not talking about these awful details. You're talking about your room. You're talking about your room. You're talking about a shadowy figure. You're not talking about these gritty details. And I think in that moment, if I were to imagine therapy, seeing Vision like that is too much. She is not ready for that. So even if I was a therapist, I would have been like, look away. It's like
Let's rewind. Let's do it over again.
Right, because you can re-experience trauma. You don't want to do that in therapy because you kind of got to start over if you move too fast.
Yeah, you don't want to dissociate.
Right. So very good point. What do you think, Nikki? Anything she's experienced so far that has given her a cathartic or therapeutic exposure to this, trying to have this narrative therapy to process her trauma in WandaVision?
I think like her internal systems are like titrating a little bit, because even when we fast forwarded to this last episode, she was telling Vision, "Hey, you don't need to do that anymore. You don't need to have the mask of fitting in anymore. You can come out as Vision, as you were, which is different than before." So I think slowly she's getting up to working up to, oh, he's dead. And her sons are also like slowly, didn't you have a brother or did you have someone close to you? So slowly introducing that to her world.
Yeah.
So progressive exposure.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I realize I've been muting Zoom. I have a little thing that it could be a tick. I've had surgery. I don't know what's going on, but I have to clear my throat a lot, and I've been muting Zoom and realize you all have been hearing it. I'm so sorry. You've probably been hearing these loud sounds, and I'm so sorry. I will now mute my Yeti mic. But no, I think that's a fantastic point. Zuki says, okay, I haven't seen the show, so I'm so sorry for spoiling it, Zuki. I think you should watch it. But
even though they're still like halfway through, there's still half of the season to go, so it's a good time to jump in.
Yeah, Zuki's laughing. I'm so sorry. If anyone's like, be so phony, or I'm blasting into this thing, I'm so sorry. It's super embarrassing. But I'm sorry for you. Hopefully it's not upset anybody. Zuki says, okay, I haven't seen the show, but I'm assuming Pietro might be that key element that will gently guide her, as he can easily gain her trust to do so. Zuki, I hope that happens.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that Pietro is a hex manifestation of, I don't even know how this started, and her subconscious is giving her brother back to guide her. I would love that way more than a Machiavellianistic, manipulative man having power over her. I think that would be, I would love it way more. For those who play Final Fantasy, it would almost remind me of like Tifa walking Cloud through the life stream to deal with his trauma. Who also, by the way, Cloud also had dissociative fugue, for those who are Final Fantasy fans, and kind of taking on Zachary's identity. But I would love that. I hope so. That's what I'm going to say. I hope Zuki is correct.
I do as well.
Oh, that'd be so great.
Because it really looks like they're taking WandaVision as a way to launch this new wave in the phase 4 of bringing in the X-Men, bringing in Deadpool. Same thing, almost like they're doing with Spider-Man 3, where they're doing the multiverse, the Spider-Verse in there. So they're really going into the multiple universes aspect here.
Very exciting. All right. Oh, hey, Tap the Zap, welcome. Yeah, I hope so, Zuki. Now, moving forward, we've got one. Oh my gosh, if Pietro walked her hand in hand, sibling and sibling, through her trauma, wow, that'd be incredible. Not to mention if the other characters from the MCU could help her. Again, she's not Megan. Megan Saidi had made a point in our Discord. She loves that not everybody's trying to kill her. There are people trying to help her. Of course, you have that the main douchebag of Sword, whose name I'm forgetting, but who's just a jerk. But
he's a word that I will not say because it starts with a D.
Fair. Technically a mature stream, but I like where you're coming from. One of us has the filter, and I'm not likely to be the one.
We try to keep it PG-13 our end, so.
Fair. That's very fair. Good to know now. Jesus, this could have gone way different for you for the first part.
Oh, no.
You're lucky I haven't said some stuff.
If you would hear what I hear in my office every day.
Okay, I figured. So, yeah, I want her to get help too. But beyond that, is there anything you think we would want to see therapeutically? Ryan is the reason we're mature. I'm a big part of it. I am a big part of that. Is there anything you believe would be essential in seeing in her therapeutic process for her to get through it in a healthy way? What are there certain things we would have to see as it would be projected in this world of WandaVision?
Coming to the realization that Vision, as the way she's seeing it, is a manifestation of her wants and her wishes on there rather than the actual vision.
Got it. Okay.
Because right now she's keeping him alive in this alternate universe that she's created while he didn't want that.
Good point. For those who don't know, Vision was very against, basically it was a DNR, do not resuscitate.
Mhm.
She did anyway. Now, we don't know her intentions, but as far as we can tell, especially with last episode, Vision's not too happy being there and being controlled. Yeah.
Because he's trying to figure out what's going on because he doesn't know what happened in his life prior to WandaVision.
Right.
What about you, Nikki? Anything that would need...
Very much. I think she needs to develop trust in
Tell me
people
more.
outside of her thing. Because if you look at it, everybody she has trusted has been taken from her.
Mhm.
They have died in one way, shape, or form. She even killed her husband, and then he was brought back and killed again in front of her.
But she seems to trust Monica.
Mm-hmm.
She sent her off, but she seems to trust Monica in the last episode where all the guns were pointed to
Yep.
the head of Sword,
Mm-hmm.
Not Monica.
but not to Monica.
Monica wasn't a part of. She wasn't back yet, or hadn't been put back into Sword when she found Vision at Sword.
Mhm.
So there is that piece where she's like, "You weren't a part of this."
Well, and if, to your point, Nikki, with the relationship, it's very possible that at one point, Wanda would have met diagnostic criterion for something we call reactive attachment disorder as a child. We've seen it very much with Eastern Bloc orphans, especially during the Cold War, where, especially in Czechoslovakia at the time, kids who, we say something. A good orphanage has a lot of babies crying. A bad orphanage, you can't hear babies crying. And a part of that is when you are in an orphanage with no babies crying, it means no one's answering their calls. And these children, as infants, are neurodevelopmentally learning. There is no one there for them. So in the 80s, 90s, people were adopting kids, largely from Eastern Bloc, and setting curtains on fire, causing harm. Parents were locking their doors because they were afraid of them. They're not bad children. But they just learned, I'm meaningless, I'm trash, there's no one there for each other, and on a neurological level, actually did not develop the ability to feel empathy or to feel love, to love or be loved. Now that can change, and as time goes on, that turns into antisocial personality disorder. I think for Wanda, the thing that held her from that fully was Pietro. I think they had each other, and then like that, traumatically died.
They survived because of one another.
Right. I think she was not this we call them rad orphans. She was not one because of Pietro.
They were angry,
but they
didn't suffer from rad.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't escape that mental health that comes from their upbringing. My goodness.
Right.
But they didn't have rad. I think they were each other's salvation. I think Pietro had a personality to kind of be like, it's fine, right?
He had that. Well, later on, he had that speed, that ability to bob and weave through things.
Right. I think that's too kind of a projection of what allowed him to get through it. And then she could have fallen. She could have slipped into the antisocial personality disorder that I think would have come very natural. But then she had Vision. And now she doesn't have Vision. She doesn't have Pietro. So the fact that I think people are very surprised. No, it can't be Wanda. How could she do something so selfish and narcissistic and harmful? I don't view Wanda that way. But I think the idea that she could have that bit in her, given her past, absolutely. I don't think it's who she is. But I think the possibility that she could become that if she doesn't get through this trauma well. Oh, yeah. I think she could become a villain if she doesn't get through her trauma well, for sure. What do you guys think?
Just because she's going through these multiple losses. And so her parents at the hand of what she believed was Tony Stark. So and Ultron capitalized on that. Her essentially getting tortured and experimented on throughout her life to gain her powers, then losing that anchor point, which was Pietro, but then finding it again within the Avengers and Vision, but that being torn up during Civil War, then them reconnecting and her forming that bond with Vision cemented that she was able to start trusting and opening up. But like Megan had mentioned, she had to essentially kill the person that was the most important in her life.
Right.
Before Thanos brought him back and killed him again.
Yes, right.
So she lost him twice.
She did.
In the span of, what, a minute and a half?
Something like that. Something
and then
go ahead.
Her getting killed herself through the blip. And I think it was episode, was it 4 that we saw the people coming back from the blip? I think it was episode 4.
Yeah, 4 or 5. Yeah, I can't remember if it's most recent, but definitely 4, if not 5.
It was, you could see people really confused. I think it was one of the most interesting shots of the entire series to see the chaos that was created when people got back. They got back and automatically had to put on the bearings to go fight against Thanos.
Right. No, that's a good point. I think something that for sure she's going to need to get through this. So PTSD, as we of course know, but for people who might not know, falls under the realm of anxiety, and that is what it is. And the pillars of anxiety is, I feel like I should be able to control things I can't, and I feel like I should be able to predict things in a world that the only thing that's predictable is unpredictability. I think Wanda is in a tough spot because she darn near can control everything, and she has created a world where she darn near can predict everything.
She controls everything in that world.
Right. And an inherent part of getting through therapy is recognizing there was nothing you could do to stop your brother's death. There was nothing you could do to stop Vision from dying. It's not your fault. It's therapy, as we know, is a weird combination of both radical acceptance of the things we can't control, and also imbuing empowerment of what we can. And I think Wanda is incredibly confused, more than anyone in the history of PTSD therapy, of what can she control and what can she not. And I believe she keeps subscribing to this myth that she should have been able to stop it. She's so powerful. I should have been able to do it. I think we saw in the most recent episode of her talking about we can't bring the dog back to life. We just can't. But I don't know, maybe she tried. I think she is grappling with this idea of maybe I didn't have control, but I should have. And until Pietro, hopefully, to Zuki's point, until Pietro can maybe say, there was nothing you can do. I made that choice. You couldn't have stopped it. I'm glad I made that choice. I'm glad I had you as a sister. I think until she can have that radical acceptance and let go of this massive power that she has that's tricking her into thinking she could have stopped it. Until we have that, I don't think we're going anywhere. And I think once she recognized that, ironically, her power is going to skyrocket. You know, ironically. Zuki says something here. One thing I learned in therapy is that trauma, with a capital T, will force itself out if not processed correctly. Good point. I like this metaphor. Like a corrupted file in your computer, you'll get errors until you blue screen. I've seen loved ones turn bad because of the refusal to face and process their trauma. I'm not shocked one bit if that happens, but I remain hopeful. Zuki, you just basically said what we probably all experience in our office all the time. I hope this goes well. I hope this person lives a great life. I hope they become their best person. There is no guarantee, and this could go south.
One way I really like to look at it is an example that Dr. Scarlet mentioned in Harry Potter, the obscurial and obscurus.
Keep going. I'm pulling her book that you're just about to reference.
Yeah, so Harry Potter therapy and Magical Beasts and Where to Find Them, when a witch or a wizard can't use their magical abilities, generally through trauma, they will suppress everything that they are. And typically people will do that within their trauma. They will kind of suppress who they are because of the trauma so invasive. It creates this dark magical entity that over time bursts and explodes and essentially kills the individual. Or in the new books, one survives and kind of goes forward with that. But trauma is kind of that way. It's that force that controls and changes the person rather when they don't really want it or not. A lot of my big trauma clients are correctional officers. And arguably they have complex trauma because of 20, 25 years of being a correctional officer. And you can see this pattern, and I have quite a few where they have this same pattern of hypervigilance, controlling situations, and needing to be safe. Mm-hmm. They get into a room, they know where all the exits are, where all the fire hazards, where all the safety precautions. Mm-hmm. They go to a restaurant, they need to sit in the booth in the corner with their back against the wall. Mm-hmm. It's a way for them to gain that control.
And Wanda
for Wanda here, it's her mm-hmm. controlling this so she doesn't need to face the uncomfortable reality that is Vision's dead and Pietro's dead.
Think about all of our clients that if they had the power to actually control others and their environment is absolutely, they're not bad people, but absolutely. A little advertisement to what Dr. Goku and I have referred to. Harry Potter Therapy. An unauthorized self-help book for the restricted section. Again, Janina Scarlett, we've referenced her twice with Act Superhero Therapy in her. And her, of course, her videos of superhero therapy. Great stuff, does a lot of comic book stuff, and I figured since we've referenced her a bunch, and you just referenced this, I pulled that out. So anyway, so yes, actually, you'll appreciate this, Dr. Goku. At San Diego Comic-Con, she was my best woman to renew my vows with my wife under the Shinron Dragon at the Viz Media booth.
Oh, awesome.
Isn't that awesome? We had an ordained minister and everything. It was great. He's a comic book writer. Anyway, Alakazam. That's so great. Thank you for buying it. It's absolutely worth it. She's a fantastic author.
Yeah, she has a few other books coming out, and they're really good.
Yeah, in fact, she also has a comic book, or excuse me, a graphic novel based on PTSD that I'm blanking on.
Dark Agents.
Dark Agents, yes. So definitely check it out. That's what. Good Lord, this is just. Welcome to the Janina Scarlett promotional stream. Dear friend, we love her. She's great. So Dark Agents is the graphic novel based on PTSD. And then if you just search Harry Potter Therapy, it'll have that book for you. She also has a book called Superhero Therapy Act, which is acceptance commitment therapy. Thanks for the host, Scott, man. All right, no, that's perfect. So we've kind of chatted about that. Gosh, I feel like there was something I really wanted to hit. Well, let me just ask this. I think I've already spoke to mine. I know it probably relates to Zuki. I think more than anything, I hope Pietro can be a positive force and is not, in fact, Mephisto. What do you hope to see moving forward as a geek or a therapist in WandaVision?
I hope she actually starts to heal from this. Like, I hope all of these players that she has in her world actually help her. Agnes, Pietro, her children. I hope Pietro is kind of like a Gestalt type deal where she's talking to him and he like what she would want him to say or needs him to say, so she can finally accept what's happening in the world, so she doesn't start using all of her enormous power for quote unquote evil or bad things.
Perfect. That'd be cool. What about you, Dr. Goku?
With everything that's going on in the show, I really hope she heals. But I think and knowing Marvel, they're going to throw a curveball in there somewhere. Because I know they've been referencing Mephisto, and Agnes seems like this lovable neighbor, but she's the one that often breaks script. Almost like she knows what's going on and is just playing along. So we're going to see something happen with Agnes. And there have been some theories as to who she might be. But I would really want Wanda to really heal and to have this melding of the two universes where the mutants really come in. I think WandaVision is the perfect platform to launch it from.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be good. I am excited about how they're going to merge the Marvel Comics, Marvel's MCU, and Fox Marvel. I like that they're getting started. I like the idea of a unique approach to doing that, especially with this. We always refer to them as universes. Why not have a multiverse? We're already doing it so much anyway. I hope they don't make it too much about Mephisto or anything else. I hope they keep it with Wanda. I hope she can, certainly with support from people, but I would hope that, I hope they go that route. And I will be writing an article that I'll post soon on GLU once we get that kind of going. Where I am referring to it more as wandering vision. I do believe this is a hex version of a dissociative fugue that has been induced by complicated trauma, and she is wandering, much like we call dissociative fugue wandering. So I do believe that's what we got on here. But hey, look, I trust Marvel. I love what they've done. If they go Mephisto, I hope they do it respectfully. I hope they can maintain her feminine strength, her superhero strength, and that it can be something that we can talk about I think more meaningfully than just another woman dominated by a man, right? Go ahead,
Because
Dr.
I think what they might be doing is if they're bringing in Mephisto, it might be that catalyst for that post-traumatic growth to push Wanda to the new heights of her powers.
Could be, but I would want it to be
that catalyst for her to process that grief.
I would want it to be done very tactfully. And Megan has brought up a couple times, there's something to this. I'm worried they are going to take her kids, as that is what happened in the comics. That is another thing that, call me cold, I don't want them to evolve the kids much. I think if we can escape the motherhood mandate and have it more of this is an independent woman, a superheroine who has her own stuff going on. She's more than just a mother. She's more than just a play toy of a man. I would love it if it's something more than that. But again, in the comics, to Megan's point, it is her children are a big part of it. They've shown through aesthetics and a number of things these kids are probably going to be the mutant children that we believe they will be.
Because they have the names.
They have the names and a lot of aesthetic stuff they've done. Same color clothes as their outfits in the comics, things like that. But again, I would love for her to be more than a mother or or a refrigerator woman or a damsel in distress. Not to go back and fret over old wounds, but Game of Thrones bothered me so much with Daenerys in the end because she became all those. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no. So if it happens again, it's going to kill me. But if they do it, I'll trust them. I'll see where they're going. I'm gonna let it play out. But I hope they stay a little away from Mephisto and kids.
But Marvel has this way of creating these characters and doing them justice.
I hope so.
In their own way of the MCU.
I hope so. It's a pretty good record. Is it perfect? No, but we don't expect perfection. I think
we don't talk about Thor's bleach eyebrows.
We don't talk about that. I'm just hoping it's. I know I got a lot of eggs in this basket. I think there have been a few things I've been able to deal with. This one, I think I'll be. Oh, so we got It's more. I don't want her to have another level of grief on top of all she has been through. No, I'm with you. I think the idea of her kids being taken away, I'll find that distracting and soap opera-y. I think the threat of it, maybe. And it'd be a heck of a thing if she recognized even my children, who I literally cannot control right now, and I can't control children in general through this hex of mine. Not to mention my children who seem to have my abilities, given what he was doing with that dog with the treat, where he could seem to communicate with the dog. If that were to happen, I would want it to be in a therapeutic way where she can even in the moment realize I can't stop this, but I can do everything I can. God, the talk of this is making me so worried. I'm gonna stop.
Because they can take it so many ways.
Right. I'm not gonna pull what I believe Wanda has done and try to control every future. Can't, guys. This is more for me, but I'm gonna tell you guys. Guys, we can't control what the writers are gonna do. Nikki, stop fretting, Nikki. Dr. Coco, you just be chill like me. Don't worry about.
Because the show's already done.
Right. It's already written.
It's already written.
Right.
Nothing that we can say is going to change anything.
It's not like kidnapping one of the writers and threatening their family is going to do anything.
No.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so any other clips and sets to autoplay for Ryan? There you go. That's funny. Any other points you wanted to make about Wanda or the characters within it or anything at all? From the geekdom side, psychology side, anything?
I would love it if Captain Rambeau, like if we're going with this feminist and like women empowering women, actually having her help Wanda, if any other character is going to do it versus having a male figure. If we're going on like the girl power empowering women.
1000%. I don't want any guy to save her at all. No, I'm with you.
Because we know she's going, hopefully, because they've been laying this foundation for Monica Rambeau since Captain Marvel.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that she's going to become this superhero herself. But they've also said in promotions, and Elizabeth Olsen has said that there is a Luke Skywalker level reveal in the show. I don't know if it's Pietro.
I don't know.
Because if it's not Pietro, I'm really, really excited to see what it is.
Well, and I think it's hard to know as comic book fans because I think any jaw-dropping thing is going to be a little bit less jaw-dropping for us because we're sort of predicting 1,000 things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, yeah, okay, that was one of the things I thought might happen. Maybe it was Pietro. Maybe it will be Rambeau. We do know from the clip for the next time that someone's breaking into Wanda's world in that car made of the material that allows them to go in there. My guess is it will be Rambeau and the astrophysicist from Thor. And
I don't remember her name.
Yeah, I'm awful with names.
I want to say Cat, but I'm sure that that's not right.
I'll stand by it. I'll stand. Sure, let's go with that. I have enough trouble with American names, and then I talk anime, and it's a crap show. It's like, and then Mimikonu, or whatever. It's a mess. Yeah, so I think that would be really cool. I'm very excited.
Darcy,
okay.
Yeah.
Alakazam says, I'm excited for the Marvel TV show cycle for the next 2 years. Superheroes every week for a while. Megan Saidi said, also, I want to say I love that they are releasing this week by week rather than dropping it all at once on Disney+. Yeah, I'm with you both.
The excitement.
Mm-hmm.
I'm both excited because I'm talking about it all the time. I also hate it because I'm talking about it all the time. So, but you know what? That's an exercise for us to, make our geekdom productive and effective and not interfere with our...
It's the same way with Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, Wandering Shink says, the awkward DC fan modding the stream. You're done. You're no longer a mod. You're done. No, I'm just kidding. If you are a DC fan, oh my gosh, good for you. That's so great.
Snyder Cut looks to be really good.
Yeah. I like the Tom King Batmans. I've liked those. I like the crossovers. But I won't judge you. I'm not going to be in that Marvel DC war, but I am a Marvel guy. Overall. But no judgments. It's just better. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to start that. I'm just joking.
they're good in their separate ways.
Oh, I love that. That's what my mom said about me when my brother was getting A's. It's like, you have your own strengths. It's like, yeah, most improved, you're interesting. It's like, yeah, whatever works. Anyway.
As a huge Batman fan,
yeah,
I love DC and Marvel almost equally. I'm a big Batman fan, and I'm excited for Snyder Cut because the little hints here and there it looks like completely different. I'm excited for that.
It'll be very interesting. Gosh, that's another panel, isn't it? That'd be another panel. Absolutely. Wandering says, yes, Jean-Luc, yes. Anything else that you guys wanted to mention? Or anything else you kind of wanted to chat about?
Well, one thing is I like that Marvel is not shying away with showing the heroes as vulnerabilities. Mm-hmm. Which I think it's really hearkening to Marvel as comics compared to DC. DC was, in its main stead, was the hero fights the bad guy, the hero will win. Whereas Marvel really had these characters that were built with these vulnerabilities, these characteristics that made their exploits that much harder and that much more relatable.
You know, to that point, I think DC has made some vulnerabilities, but only as a plot device. I think to your point, in Marvel, it's very organic. It's like, it doesn't necessarily mean they're weaker, and it can exist while they're winning. It's just, look, they're human beings, and it's a part of them, and it's not like, well, this is what made them become superheroic. It's like, no, I mean, they're already superheroic, and they're still dealing with human issues, and this is the way it goes.
That's why I like Tom Holland as Spider-Man, because he was a teen doing teen stuff and screwing up as a teen.
Right. Exactly right. I mean, I think there's something to that. You don't want it to be too on the nose, and Marvel's done such a great job. And kudos back to the vision, back to Iron Man, of the vision of this massive universe, because how in the world would you accomplish that unless you did this massive universe? You'd have to rush through it, and you don't have time for organic trauma. You don't have time for organic mental health that's not necessarily a plot device. It just is. It's just there. Because that's what mental health is. It's not always a plot device. It's not always a milestone. It's a chronic thing that's there, and it's bad, and it's good, and it's reality. And I love that Marvel has done so well at portraying that, you know. Still movies, of course, like Iron Man 3, of course, they're going to use PTSD as a play. It's going to happen. But with WandaVision, I think
they made it very organic within Iron Man 3 as well.
Yeah.
How could he not have PTSD after what he went through Avengers?
Right. It was both. It was his need to, and again, similar. It was him trying to control things he couldn't. He's not Wanda, but he has a lot of power, and he felt like, I should have been able to stop that. So he starts creating all of these different versions of his suits, and 41, I think, variants of his suits, and I got to be able to protect everybody. And it's like, dude, you can't. Right, in the end, he had to be saved by, you know, empty suits and his wife and all these other people, and there were things that were out of control. And it's like, yeah, that was humbling, you know. And then he had his radical acceptance at the end. So and that's his gosh. I mean, we talk comics all the time. It's why we do Geek Therapeutics, because it's such good representations of this stuff. But we're looking forward to the future episodes. Maybe we'll have you guys come back if you care to after a few more come out. We'll kind of reconvene. Hopefully all of our theories have been answered correctly because we're awesome. Or we'll miss the mark entirely. It's some
because
out of
comics.
nowhere because comics. And then exactly. And then there's a weird crossover of murderous Hal Jordan from DC who comes in, and we're like, what is going on? And then it literally is Luke Skywalker coming in because he's Marvel now. And we're like, okay. That was I didn't see.
You
that.
have my attention.
You had my curiosity. Now you have my attention. It's like, oh, okay. So I think we can call it a night from there. I really appreciate the discussion. I've been wanting to talk about this so much with people and having a robust conversation. Thank you to the viewers so much. If you want to join our Discord, we love having these conversations. You can talk directly with us. It is again, at Geeks Like Us, our main thing is to be unapologetically enthusiastic. We help people turn their passions into careers, and we try to marry. It's basically, imagine us if psychology and geekdom had a baby. That's what we are. We do a lot of gaming, a lot of streaming, tabletop, DMing, and we really are strong advocates of geek therapy. As the co-founders, me and Dr. Cannell, are geek therapists themselves, and we have this wonderful community. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the meaningful dialogue. And for those who are lurking, also thank you so much. We appreciate the support. We hope this was a fun talk. If we might do a poll of anything else you might want to hear or talk about, whether it be more about WandaVision or something entirely different. So, again, our Discord link is there. Please join us. And, thank you so much. Fantastic Mixer Hops. Thank you so much, Zuki. And we hope to see you in the future. Nikki, thank you so much. Dr. Goku, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yep,
It was a blast.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Alakazam. Oh, and we loved having you. It's what makes it so good. We love our community, and you are absolutely a part of it. Oh, and Spud, thank you so much. So you all have a great night. We have tomorrow night. We have Randall Hampton doing. Thank you so much, Tap the Zap. We have Randall Hampton doing drawing conclusions with Kelly the Opera Geek. They'll be talking about video game music. It's going to be amazing. And we're going to do our best with copyright there, keeping 20 seconds or less clips. Thursday, we have GLU Happy Hour with our Lord Azure specialists playing Bloodborne with some amazing folks. Friday, we have an anime watch party. If you're into Dr. Stone, please join us in Discord. We love anime. We love talking anime. We have an anime podcast coming. And Dr. Stone is at 9 p.m. EST, and we have a good time. We would love to have you on Discord. We stream it. You don't have to have any server. And is that all of our I think that's our programming for the week. There might be more, but that's pretty much it. So guys, thank you so much. And for people in the stream, thank you so much. You have a stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you all soon. All right, bye.